write under the pen name Nicola, Italia, and it's a pleasure to be here this evening. I am reading from my third novel, which is one of four. My first novel was called The Sheik and the Slave, and it tells the story of Catherine and Mohammed. And Sebastian is actually the son of my first book. So it's as Liz mentioned, he's living in France in 1788, and France is about to go into the revolution. And he is secretary to the British ambassador, and he meets up with Sophie Gauvreau, who is, lovely, educated, a little bit saucy, and she is writing pamphlets talking about France and the problems with France, and so she's getting herself into trouble. And in the scene that's happening right now, they're at a salonist home in France. In those days, people would meet and gather and talk about revolutionary ideas, and so she is kind of going head to head with some older gentlemen who are very traditional in their values, and so Sebastian is kind of seeing that. And so that's where it begins, and I'm in chapter 7, and so I will begin reading. Madame Necker raised her voice and was almost insulted. "You can't be serious." The argument had become quite heated, and at the heart of the argument was Sophie's pamphlet. Madame Necker and her daughter Germaine were only too happy to champion, and Sophie was delighted. But several other gentlemen did not and were happy to argue their point. What more can a woman want than to be mistress of her own home and mother to her children? Monsieur Girard argued. Several men around them murmured their approval, and Madame Necker's cheeks burned hotly under the candles of the chandelier. A woman may want more than life. A woman may want more from life, Monsieur Girard. Sophie spoke quietly at first. She was new to the salon, and many didn't even know her name. "You are so young, my dear. I'm sure your father will marry you off in wealth, and then you will see," the man replied. Sebastian had come into the doorway and was listening to the conversation with interest. He crossed his arms over his chest nonchalantly. "Thank you, monsieur. I'm sure my father would look after me very well, and does. However, my husband, or lack of one, will be my choice. If I don't wish to marry, then I won't marry." Her words were quiet but forceful. Sebastian watched Sophie's face in the candlelight and recalled the kiss in the rain. He licked his bottom lip, remembering her mark on him. "What nonsense! Who is your father? I will speak to him," Girard said to the assembled people amidst several snickers. "He's in the other room, and you're most certainly welcome to speak to him. But he will not be swayed, and more importantly, neither will I," Sophie retorted. "See, this is what happens when women have ideas beyond their sex. You seem to be quite a handful, my dear," Monsieur Girard said. "All sorts of nonsense will start spinning around in that lovely head of yours." "I thank you for the compliment, but lovely or not, I will marry for love, and someone of an equal, or not at all. And no one will force me otherwise." Sophie tilted her head up. Monsieur Girard shook his head. "Quite the handful," he muttered. Sophie moved away from him and his cronies and went near the fire to warm her hands and calm her passionate nature. These men were no different than her grandmother in their thoughts and beliefs, but to have people publicly tell her that she would marry whomever her father deemed appropriate, with no thought to her own feelings, seemed absurd. She felt it was an insult to assume women were merely chattel to be used for birthing children and no thoughts of feelings inside them. "I understand there are great pleasures to be found in marriage," Sebastian whispered. Sophie whirled around to find Sebastian standing beside her. His intimate use of the word pleasures and his insinuation was best ignored. "Monsieur Fairfax is like a bad penny." Sebastian took the reference in stride and smiled. He looked very handsome in a dark Merlot-colored coat and brown breeches with a white waistcoat. The colors brought out his handsome features, and the wool fabric set him apart from the dandies in the room dressed in silks and pastels. His dark brown hair was clubbed, and he wore no powder or beauty mark on his face. In fact, she could no more imagine Sebastian with a beauty mark than she could her father. He was a masculine man. "Well, you, Mademoiselle Sophie, are certainly aware that the green of your dress brings out your eyes and complements your hair very well," he said, speaking lowly. Sophie blushed under the secretary's scrutiny and tried to bite her tongue with a tart reply. She chose to respond cordially. "You look well also." Sebastian did laugh this time at her compliment, which was almost not one. "Thank you. I shall treasure those 4 words until I am in my grave." He placed a hand upon his heart. "You're a strange one," she returned. "And you, Mademoiselle Sophie, argue like a parliamentarian with men older than your father and look like a painting of Venus," he said quietly. Sophie looked into Sebastian's eyes and did not see a hint of mocking. She felt herself looking too long at him and turned her face. Sebastian watched the firelight play across her features. She had a perfect oval face with hazel eyes and lush lips, but the auburn hair was something to behold, and he wanted very badly to pull out her combs and sift his fingers through the silk tresses. "These men don't understand," she explained, nodding in their direction. "Yes, I heard the latter part of your conversation," he admitted. "They expect women to marry whomever is chosen for them with no thought of love or affection," Sophie complained. "Love is a rare thing. Most marriages are arranged for convenience, money, or family connections," Sebastian told her. "Yes, but things are changing and should change, and women should have a say. We aren't chattel." "Change takes time." "Time," Sophie scoffed. "Yes, time. And there is great pleasure to be found in marriage and with children. Love, or at least affection, can sometimes follow." "Pleasure for men, you mean," Sophie returned. "For women as well. For women as well. Giving birth, which can last a day or more, and they're in excruciating pain the entire time. And oftentimes the woman dies, and the child is raised without a mother." "Not all women, Sophie. While the men gallivant around town with whomever they choose, like a dog in heat." Sophie hissed, her blood was up. "Yes, some men are like that," he agreed. "Some men?" Her hazel eyes challenged him. "Yes, but not all men. And as men and women, we each have our roles to play. You, to marry, bear children, and raise them. That is your role. And yours?" Sophie asked suddenly, very irritated. "To carry the seed for the child," he said matter-of-factly, "to provide for them." "So you think like Monsieur Girard? Women are to marry, carry, and bear, that is all." "Not exactly," he began. "You may be young and educated, and of course you're secretary of the Duke. But you, monsieur, are nothing but a savage." She moved away from him quickly and was replaced by his friend Andrew. "Well, I think it's safe to assume that's one lovely you won't be betting," Andrew smiled. "Don't bet on it," Bash replied as he watched the lovely Sophie flounce out of the room. That evening, Sophie had barely stepped out of her dress and corset before she sat before her writing table and began writing in a furious manner. She could still hear the mocking tone of Monsieur Girard in her ear, which was bad enough. But she also recalled Sebastian and his handsome face as he told her that he was charged with carrying the seed while she was the broad mare to be impregnated for man's purpose. Dorset's devils indeed. She wondered how many seeds he had spread across Paris. "Marry, Carry, and Bear" was the title she chose for her next pamphlet. She had barely flung her necklace down on the table and had only taken off one earring before her quill pen was scratching away at the linen paper. She was so angry after attending the salon that thoughts were racing through her head faster than she could place them on the page. These men were archaic and ancient, and they belonged in the Dark Ages. The tips of her fingers became black with ink stains as she wrote with her right hand and kept steady lines with her left. She wrote about education and the need for men to join the proper century with everyone else. The morning light had barely begun to creep over the horizon when she practically crumpled the pages into Marie's hand as the maid began her duties for the morning. Marie nodded in understanding, and Sophie was sure Monsieur Blanche would get more than he bargained for with this pamphlet. She slept well past noon because of the night spent writing, and Eugenie admonished her for being a lazy Parisian lady. Sophie eyed her grandmother with annoyance as she threw open her windows and filled the room with light. "Up, up, Sophie. The day is passing you by," her grandmother told her. Sophie complied, but only because she knew her father would be angry with her if she threw her grandmother out the second-story window.